Tadano is an ugly loser who is ignored by everyone in school. However, when he discovers the prettiest girl in school is too shy to speak in public, he offers to help her make friends, but ends up rizzing her instead. It all begins when Tadano arrives at his new school, and he's surprised that he made it into such a prestigious academy despite being an average Joe. At the shoe locker, he runs into a girl named Komi, so he tries to greet her without seeing her face, but when sees that she's more beautiful than all your favorite OnlyFans models combined, it makes him jubilate like a weeb losing his V-card.
Hey, yo!
However, Komi suddenly starts shivering and stares at him like an enemy stand user, so he fears that his marbles are about to get cut off, but she swiftly walks away instead, leaving him confused. While walking into class, Tadano is still baffled by the beauty queen's strange behavior, but he swallows a dose of copium by accepting that she'd never get involved with a pathetic loser like him. However, when he sits down in class, he's shocked to see that Komi is seated next to him, and all the gooners in class are planning to lobotomize him out of envy, causing him to tremble in fear. Just then, the teacher arrives and asks the students to introduce themselves. When it's Komi's turn, she stands in silence like a statue for several seconds, which makes everyone confused. Then, suddenly, she walks to the front of the class and writes her name on the board with the aura and intensity of a samurai, making everyone cheer for her. Once it's Tadano's turn, he tries to follow through by cracking a joke, but the jealous losers boil in anger while throwing shades at him.
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no, man.
Making him conclude that his school life is already over. During class, Tadano can't take his eyes off Komi because everything she does is beautiful. When her eraser suddenly falls, he tries to hand it to her, but a Naruto wannabe throws a compass like a shuriken, attempting to destroy his hand out of jealousy. Before the ninja can attack again, Tadano quickly hands Komi the eraser, but she suddenly stares at him, so Tadano looks away to avoid her. Once the final bell rings, everyone in class rushes to simp for Komi, but Tadano is accidentally knocked out by an NPC during the stampede. As he wakes up, he hears a soft, silent voice asking why she can't talk in front of people anymore, and after fully regaining consciousness, he notices that it's coming from Komi, so he lies that he didn't hear anything. However, Komi suddenly runs away from him, making him realize that he's just given her an embarrassing memory, so he brainstorms about how to fix things until he remembers her shivering during her intro. He then loudly asks if she isn't good at talking in front of people, and this makes her stop, but he starts feeling stupid because he's literally talking to the class beauty queen. However, she turns back and tries to say something to him, but starts stuttering like a brain-dead chimpanzee again, which confirms his theory about her speaking problems. As they arrange the chairs together, Tadano asks what she was trying to say to him earlier, but she trembles again, so he suggests writing on the board. Using the board, Komi asks how he knew about her speaking problems, so he explains that he observed through her reactions and asks if anyone has noticed before, but she says no one has. She then explains that she desperately wants to talk to people, but her face always freezes whenever she approaches them, making them faint or run away, and she thinks that people hate her. After expressing this, Komi gets emotional while telling Tadano that she wanted to ask him to have lunch with her, and Tadano is surprised that she's gone through so much on her own despite being a nice girl. He hands her a handkerchief, thinking she's crying, but when she turns, he sees that she just has the hiccups. She then apologizes for bothering him earlier and asks him to forget what happened before wiping the board clean. However, as she walks away, Tadano suddenly writes on the board, asking how many brain cells Annie Ender subscribers have. So she turns back and correctly replies -100, and they spend the next few minutes cheerfully talking about their interests together, until the board is completely covered. After wiping the board, Komi reveals that her dream is to make 100 friends, and Tadano says he'll be her best friend who'll help her find the remaining 99, but this makes her heart skip a beat, so Tadano gets flustered and wipes the board. However, Komi thanks him and dashes out of class faster than Sonic the Hedgehog, so he doesn't have to see her explode from happiness. The next morning, Komi meets up with Tadano in the hallway, but when he greets her, she can't muster up a reply as usual, so he takes her to the stairway to do some vocal exercises that would help her make friends. However, Tadano has no idea that achieving his goal is going to be more difficult than finding the One Piece, because their school is known to be packed with all kinds of weird delinquents. The next day in class, Tadano imagines a scenario where he tells someone about Komi's goal to make friends, and they cheerfully agree to be friends with her, so he decides to try it out in real life on a brown-haired girl named Ren, who is currently chatting with her friends in front of class. When he calls out to Ren, her friend group suddenly freezes due to his negative Riz. But Ren cheerfully answers him, so he tries to tell her about Komi's wish. However, Ren suddenly grabs his shoulder and coldly spams some harsh insults at him, which makes him lose morale, before cheerfully telling him not to speak with her again. During lunch period, Tadano is drowning in misery because he tried to talk to several of his classmates about Komi's goal, but they rejected him in a similarly brutal way. He feels stupid for offering to help Komi have friends when he, himself, has none of his own, and he punishes himself by jamming his empty skull on the desk. However, as a last resort, he decides to try with the person he knows that could never reject the offer, so he meets his old friend, Najimi, who greets him with a smug face. Komi suddenly appears beside Tadano, so Tadano introduces Najimi to Komi as his classmate from his old school, but he notices that Najimi is cross-dressing, so he asks the moron why he's wearing a skirt. Najimi boldly tells Tadano that he's a girl, so Tadano scolds him for trying to follow in Bruce Jenner's footsteps, but Tadano isn't surprised by this at all because ever since they've known each other, Najimi has been a compulsive liar who swings both ways. Suddenly, their classmates surround Najimi, and he starts cheerful conversations with all of them, but Tadano wonders if he's offering them a ride on his Willy Wonka, so he explains that they're all his close friends, which shocks Komi. However, Tadano isn't surprised because even in their old school, half of the students were friends of Najimi because he's the honored one when it comes to socializing. After the students leave, Tadano approaches Najimi to ask for a request, but Najimi starts teasing him by offering to let him play with his fake plots. And this creeps Komi out, so Tadano assures her that he's not a bad person. Tadano then asks her to try the phrase they practiced that morning, but the mute airhead doesn't understand what he means, so he whispers that she should ask Najimi to be friends with her, making the surrounding students cringe from jealousy. However, she starts vibrating like Sophie Rain's sword again, so Tadano compliments her for making progress before explaining to Najimi that she wants to be friends with him. Tadano then asks him to accept her as a friend because he feels that it would be easy for a social machine like Najimi, but Najimi gives them the shock of their life by saying that it isn't possible. As Komi is frozen in shock, Tadano takes Najimi outside, where he asks Najimi why he didn't accept Komi. Najimi explains that he isn't into Komi because he met her once in the past, and even though he approached her cheerfully, she stared at him quietly like a mannequin, making him think she was ignoring him. Komi was the one person he couldn't befriend back then, so the shock made him stuck in bed for a week. Since he's a mature person, Najimi doesn't believe Komi hates him, but he admits that her eyes gave him chills back then. Tadano explains that he misunderstood her because Komi wasn't trying to ignore him, and he suggests walking back home together, but Najimi refuses because he feels that Komi already has a lot of friends. However, Tadano looks at him with a serious face while asking him to talk to her, and Najimi asks if he likes her, so Tadano explains that he just wants to help her since she needs help. Hearing this, Najimi finally agrees to walk home with Komi on the condition that Tadano starts calling him by his given name, and Tadano agrees. Najimi then brings up how Tadano's crush rejected him after he asked her out in their old school, and the shame hits Tadano so hard that he has explosive diarrhea. After school, Najimi asks Komi to walk home with him, and she agrees, but Tadano notices from his hiding spot that they're awkward around each other. While walking together, Najimi apologizes to Komi for saying he didn't want to be friends with her, and he asks her if she remembers their previous meeting, but she still can't muster up words, so she twitches like a robot in response. Najimi then asks her about her popularity, but she starts trembling in front of him again, making him tremble as well, so Tadano texts Najimi, asking if she's okay, and Najimi says he's given up. Suddenly, two ugly losers named Ma and Shi arrive and start telling Najimi about how much they miss her, so she asks what they want. Ma gives a full love confession speech from telenovela, asking Najimi to go out with him, but Najimi crushes his dreams immediately by revealing that he's a boy. However, Ma reveals that he's Diddy's #1 apprentice and tries to invade Najimi's back door with his 15-inch machine.
Whoa, 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 hey!
But Komi suddenly taps him from behind and hands him his key. Since the fool can't comprehend her Nezuko language, he gets scared and translates her swords to be death threats, so he runs away with his goofy companion. This impresses Najimi so much that he tells Komi that he wants to be her friend and laughs while calling Komi a funny person. After he leaves, Tadano tells Komi that she's made her second friend, so she leaps joyously in celebration. The next day, Tadano and Komi are having lunch together, and Najimi arrives to join the fun, but Komi starts shivering in excitement, making him tremble in fear of her. Najimi then notices that Tadano is keeping a distance from Komi, so he asks Tadano to come closer to them, but Tadano notices the angry mob of haters praying for his downfall behind him, so he declines. After taking a seat, Najimi tries to start a million conversations at once with Komi, but her brain starts overheating, so Tadano intervenes by bringing up her goal to make 100 friends. However, Najimi suddenly sends Komi to get a super complicated ice cream order for him, and after she leaves, Najimi explains to Tadano that he's trying to train her on how to make friends. He then sends Tadano to follow her since he has other friends to meet during lunch, so Tadano watches from afar while Komi enters the restaurant. When she arrives at the counter, the owner asks what she wants, but she starts doing sign language, so he gives her the menu to make her pick. As she struggles with the menu, the owner sees her cute face and gets enlightenment from Gunnar Heaven, which makes him cook up his finest ice cream condition for her. Even though Komi knows it's not the right order, she can't muster up the words to tell him, so she takes the ice cream to Najimi, who tells her that it's the wrong order. This makes her cry, so Najimi and Tadano go on their knees while apologizing to her. The next day, the four-eyed girl from earlier, Agari, is in the library, stacking some books while thinking about how she's a shy person who shuts down whenever people look at her. However, Komi starts staring at her from the counter behind with a dark aura, so she starts trembling in fear, causing all the books she's stacked to scatter around. As Agari picks up the books, she thinks about how Komi is so calm and dignified despite having the looks of Scarlett Johansson, and she's such a fan of Komi's cool nature that she starts geeking out in front of her. However, she feels that she's the polar opposite of Komi because she's a half-blind, chubby, antisocial loser, and she's so confused by the fact that Komi is watching her that her chunky stomach starts collapsing. After taking a dump, she chills in that toilet because she considers it her personal space where no one could see her, but she notices that Komi is standing on the other side of the door, which makes her tremble while begging Komi to forgive her for ruining the air with her turds that smell like rotten eggs. After Komi leaves, Agari tries to run away, but the teacher suddenly arrives and sends her to announce something to the class. She tries to explain her lack of social skills to the teacher, but notices that Komi is staring at her from behind like a horror movie alien, so she accepts the teacher's request. While walking to class, Agari wonders what she could do because her stomach is about to explode again, but her self-esteem appears like an angel in her head and tells her how to make the announcement. However, when she tries, she only manages to say a single word, which makes no sense at all. And as her classmates ask what she means, she tries to run away in embarrassment, but notices that Komi is still staring at her like a cursed spirit, so she boldly makes the announcement before running away. When she arrives at the roof, she jumps in excitement because she's faced her fears for the first time in her life. Earlier that day, Najimi presented Tadano and Komi with a list of people from his friends who have the closest personalities to Komi and proposed that they pick her next friend from that list, and Tadano loved the idea. To kickstart this mission, Najimi introduced them to Agari, telling them all the mental issues she suffers from, and this made Tadano feel bad for her, but Komi felt a sense of kinship with her. However, when it was time to move to the next person, they noticed that Komi was long gone, and she went to greet Agari but couldn't muster up the words to do so. In the present, Komi explains everything to Tadano, but she starts to feel bad about fumbling the whole thing, so he calms her down by assuring her that she'll have another chance. Just then, Agari arrives and shyly tells Komi that she was scared because of her constant scaring, but she then smiles while admitting that she changed because of it and thanks her for her help. Tadano then seizes the opportunity by offering that they become friends, but Agari suddenly runs upstairs while claiming that it's impossible, before explaining that she wants to be Komi's dog since she doesn't feel worthy of being her friend. Later in class, Komi tells Tadano that she now has a phone, and he's confused that she didn't have one all this time, so she explains that she didn't need one before, but things are different now since Tadano has helped her make friends. Seeing this, Tadano gets emotional, but she tells him that she needs to get her friends' numbers, so he suggests going to ask Najimi and Agari. However, she tells him that she'll manage it herself because she feels bad about always relying on him, and Tadano is amazed that she's already grown so much. When she approaches Najimi, he greets her cheerfully, but she approaches him with her scary aura, making him fear for his life. After she explains her intentions to him, Najimi agrees to give her his number and suggests inputting it directly into her phone instead of writing it on paper. Soon after, Komi meets Aguri to get her number, but the chubby weirdo starts asking her to roleplay 50 Shades of Grey with her, so Komi gives up and leaves. When she returns to class, she hands Tadano her phone, but Aguri starts rushing in to give Komi her number because Najimi told her earlier to write hers on a sheet of paper since Komi wants Tadano's number first. After she explains this, both Komi and Tadano turn red from embarrassment, and he inputs his number in her phone without making eye contact, but when he finally looks at her, her cuteness makes him scream like a cyan. Hours later, the teacher asks for students to volunteer for the position of class president, and everyone stays silent, but once she asks them to nominate, everyone unanimously picks Komi. When she asks Komi if she'll take the role, Komi starts trembling in fear, so Tadano decides to nominate himself in opposition, but Najimi suddenly raises his hand and tells Tadano to let him handle it. All the class gooners surround Najimi to punish him, but he announces that the role of class president is too small for their glorious queen, so they agree that he's right and give her the position of the god of the class instead. As they celebrate, the teacher brings up the fact that the class rep position is still open, so the students coldly pick Tadano since they consider it a trashy role for losers. Later that evening, Komi calls Tadano, but once he answers, she gets so flustered that she ends the call immediately. As she panics, Tadano returns the call, and after she picks it up, he asks her to say something if she's okay. However, Komi tells him that he dialed the wrong number before ending the call again, so the moron screams that she has a beautiful voice. The next day in class, Najimi is playing with his friends, but Komi is trembling behind them because she low-key wants to join the fun. Seeing this, Tadano realizes that she can't blend into the cool friend group playing the game, so he proposes that she play a private game with Aguri and Najimi afterwards. However, Najimi hears them, so he invites Komi to join the fun, and all the other fools start simping for her in anticipation. Tadano realizes that Najimi plans for her to get toyed with, so he offers to join the game as well, and the other classmates coldly accept him into the game. When the game gets to Komi's turn, she doesn't say anything, but the foolish simps still give her the win due to pretty girl privilege, so Najimi ups the stakes by stipulating that the loser has to make a kissy face. During the second round, all the idiots of Komi's fan club do their best to make Komi lose so that they'd see her kissy face, but Tadano ruins their plans by taking the L for himself, so they walk away in disappointment. After everyone leaves, Komi thanks Tadano for helping her and admits that she had fun, which makes him happy. The following day, the students are doing an eye test in the infirmary, but when it's Komi's turn, she can't give a verbal response, so she says her answer by pointing. During the test, a pink-haired girl named Makaru is giving Komi a death stare because she secretly plans to beat her in the physical exams. Apparently, the exam has 4 stages, which include vision, height, weight, and seated height, and if Makaru can win 3 or more, she'll be victorious and become the superior being in their class. While watching her, Makaru feels that she'll get an easy win since Komi appears not to be answering, but the teacher announces that Komi's eyesight is above average, and Makaru is shocked because she couldn't see Komi pointing. As Komi walks away, Makaru is so blinded by her delusions that she concludes that Komi bribed the teacher just to beat her, so she marches ahead to take her test with strong determination to beat Komi, but her eyesight ends up scoring below average, just like your sausage. During the height test, Komi's height is measured, and Makaru declares that she'll defeat her, but Komi ends up winning by a landslide, so Makaru starts crashing out, causing Komi to shiver in fear of her. However, Makaru realizes that she only lost because Komi has longer legs, and since many guys in the K-drama brainrot she watches prefer short-legged women, the shameless dimwit tells Komi they had a tie while walking away. The next day, Tadano is walking to school, cheerfully thinking about his friendship with Komi, but he's suddenly gagged and tossed off screen. Shortly after, Ren walks to school with her friends, and when she sees Komi, she realizes that she has a crush on her. While following Komi, she gets so overwhelmed by Komi's charm that she starts twitching like a monkey on crack, but this creeps Komi out. So she snaps out of it and starts enjoying Komi's scent while following her ahead. Suddenly, one of Komi's hairs falls out, so Ren does what any of you gooners would do in that situation. She picks it up and spends several minutes licking it before putting it in a bag to use for night activities. Ren makes it her goal to make Komi her permanent scissors partner, and as a first step, she decides to greet her with a smile. However, when she tries to do so, Komi's loyal dog, Agari, cuts the simp line to glaze Komi, so Ren puts on a demon mask, which scares her away. After gathering confidence, Rem tries to approach Komi again, but this time, Najimi interrupts and starts a conversation with Komi, which pisses Ren off. However, when Najimi greets Ren, she goes back into happy mode while greeting her back and seizes the opportunity to say hi to Komi, but Komi trembles in response, so she concludes that Komi is perfect since she believes the queen is meant to ignore losers like her. Ren then calls Najimi to the hallway and aggressively asks him what his relationship with Komi is, and he explains that they're friends, so she threatens to make him a real girl the painful way if he doesn't introduce her to Komi. Later in class, Najimi introduces Komi to Ren, and Komi starts trembling again, but this only makes the simp queen lose all composure while glazing Komi even more. After calming herself down, Rem decides to act normally, so she invites Komi to have some Burger King treats with her during lunch, but Komi is bothered by the fact that she's in Tadano's seat instead of him. However, Ren is so charmed by Komi's troubled face that she starts jumping and stomping the ground like a drunk rock star, but when she notices that Komi is staring at her, she explains that she's just happy. After she leaves, Komi starts shivering again, and as Najimi checks on her, he realizes that Tadano isn't in class, so he freaks out. Meanwhile, Tadano wakes up in a strange room and notices that he's tied up and gagged. As he looks around, he sees that the room is flooded with pictures of Komi, and he realizes that he's trapped in Ren's room, so he starts panicking. In class, Najimi offers to visit Ren after school, and when she asks why, he says he figured she wants to talk since she hasn't left Tadano's seat since break period. However, Ren just wants to be by Komi's side since she had so much fun with her during the lunch they shared, so she declines the offer. But when Najimi tells her that Komi is coming as well, she immediately folds. When she remembers that Tadano is stuck in her room, she starts panicking, but she can't pass up an opportunity to get cozy in bed with Komi, so she still agrees. Hours later, Ren returns to her room, and after taking all the photos down, she locks Tadano in a closet while threatening to bury him underwater if he screams. As Ren plays around with Najimi and Komi, Tadano hears Najimi's voice, so he hits the closet door to alert him. But Ren hits him back while lying to them that her neighbors are cracking in King Kong position. However, Tadano continues knocking on the door, so she threatens to wear his intestines like a scarf if he doesn't shut up and then warns them not to open the closet as she walks away to get them tea. After she leaves, Najimi immediately opens the closet to check on Tadano, but Ren catches them red-handed and explains that she's acting like a psychopath because she believes that Komi should be with her instead of a worthless incel like Tadano. She then asks Komi to be her friend, but Komi shakes her head in disagreement and frees Tadano from his bondage before thanking her for hosting them. As she walks away, Ren chases her to the door and tries to gaslight her, but Komi tells her that she chooses her own friends before walking away, leaving Ren in tears. The next day in school, Komi coldly tells Tadano that they need to talk, making him think that she's mad at him, but she takes him to the stairway, where she tells him that she's not sure if she should be his friend, because she doesn't want him to get hurt because of her. However, Tadano tells her that he chooses his own friends, and the Uno reverse was so cool that his brain overheats, but Komi verbally tells him that she wants nothing more than to be friends with him, so he tells her the same thing. Just then, Najimi arrives with Ren, who apologizes to Tadano and Komi for her actions, and Komi writes that it's okay, but she thinks that Komi doesn't want to speak to her, so she starts crying. After they explain Komi's situation to her, she starts celebrating the fact that Komi has a cute side, and Komi asks her to be friends, so she gleefully agrees. The next day, Komi arrives in school, looking so drop-dead gorgeous without her jacket that all the students in the yard celebrate her existence. When she approaches Najimi, he compliments her new look, but when Ren sees her, her brain has a full meltdown, causing her to pass out. She soon arrives in class, where Tadano greets her, and she asks him if she looks weird since everyone is acting differently around her. But Tadano's skull overheats, and he tells her she looks good in her summer uniform. During the sports period, Makaru is hyped because she considers herself Komi's rival, and she wants to finally get the win over Komi during their fitness test that day, but the students shove her to the ground while rushing to glaze Komi's look. The embarrassment gets even worse for Makaru, as Komi smokes her easily in the first 6 stages of the physical exam, leaving her in shambles. Soon, they both stand in place for the 7th and final round, which is a 50-meter run, and when the race begins, Makiru goes plus ultra with her run, summoning the spirits of all the speedsters in the flash to help her get the W, but Komi sprints ahead of her with ease, making her admire how elegant Komi looks. After the race, Makiru tells Komi that watching her made her realize how far she's strayed in life and stretches her hand to Komi while thanking her for the challenge, but Komi leaves her hanging purely out of shyness, so she concludes that Komi has accepted her as a rival and declares that she'll defeat her next time. After school, Najimi asks Komi if they can visit her, but she starts trembling, and Najimi realizes that she's scared to show her home life, even though she's always wanted to have friends over. However, Komi ends up agreeing to Najimi's request, so they head to Komi's house, where they see Komi's mom, and Tadano is shocked that she's just as gorgeous as Komi. Komi's mom, Shuko, is so happy that her daughter brought friends home that she celebrates and calls her husband to join the party before remembering that he isn't at home. When they arrive in Komi's room, they sit in awkward silence for several minutes because Komi has zero experience with hosting people, but Shiko breaks the silence by offering them tea and snacks. As they eat together, Najimi tells them that he has to use the bathroom, but in reality, Bro just wants to leave Tadano and Komi alone and watch from the sidelines while they crack in her room since he can't afford a Brazzers subscription. After 5 minutes of dead silence, Najimi re-enters the room, frustrated that his plan failed, and he decides to switch to plan B, which is finding something sus in Komi's room. While searching the room, Najimi sees a photo album on the shelf, so he asks her if they can check it out, and she agrees. As they look through the album together, they see pictures of Komi when she was younger, and they notice that she's taken a lot of lessons together. Hours later, Tadano and Komi bid Komi farewell and apologize for not cleaning up her place before leaving, so she heads to her room to clean the place up. However, Najimi sends a photo of them that he took during their fun, so Komi meets her mom downstairs and tells her she wants a new picture frame. The next day after school, Komi asks Tadano and Najimi to go to a ramen shop, and Najimi cheerfully agrees, but Tadano is surprised since she rarely asks to go anywhere, so she explains that it's her dream to go to a ramen shop. However, Agari suddenly arrives and decides to tag along since she considers herself a ramen expert. She recommends a spot called Ramen Daro, and Najimi warns Komi that their ramen is greasy, but Komi says she doesn't mind. While Agari makes their order, Najimi points out that most ramen spots have their rules, but Agari taps his shoulder to inform him that he's broken the first rule of the shop, which is to remain silent. As he freaks out, the others in line start pressuring them because the second rule is that customers must make their order quickly and sit down, and the third is that they should be polite to the boss and wait calmly. When the owner is done making the ramen, everyone is amazed by how they look, and as Komi eats her ramen, everyone watches her like a Netflix movie, but she assumes that she's messed up somehow, so she finishes up quickly and leaves. After everyone else finishes their meals, Komi asks them to visit that store again with her sometime, but the boys refuse because the bowl they ate filled them up way too much. The next day, Tadano and the gang are having a cheerful conversation, but an airhead named Naka wearing an eye patch suddenly storms into their class and starts doing her best Harry Potter impression. She then asks Komi to do something called a blood pact with her, but Komi starts trembling, so she acts like her Sharingan eye is going berserk and runs away. Tadano explains to Komi that the whole blood pact thing was Naka trying to be friends with her, but Komi is shocked that he understands her, so Najimi reveals that Tadano used to behave just like her in their old school. Back then, Tadano dressed up like Justin Bieber, and when he spotted a baddie in class, he told Najimi that he was starting a mission called Operation L, which was to confess his feelings to her. However, when he asked her out, she coldly rejected him, claiming he was corny, and that was the day he decided that he'd never play it cool anymore. In the present, Najimi explains to Komi that Chunibyu is a stage in the life of young people where they're deluded into thinking they're special, and Tadano was in the stage during that rejection, but he notices that Tadano has passed out due to embarrassment. During sports, the teacher announces that the students should split into pairs, and Naka tries to approach Komi, but Komi's entire fan club charges ahead of her and begs their queen to partner up with them. Seeing this, she calls them fools and starts yapping about how no one can handle her domain expansion, but she eventually curls up and cries while wondering why no one wants to pair up with her. However, Komi suddenly arrives, startling her in the process, and asks to be her partner in the sports exercise, so she agrees. As they do stretches together, all of Komi's simps rant about how jealous they are, but the teacher eventually calls everyone to head over to the basketball court, so Komi starts walking away. However, Naka calls her back and thanks her before using a weeb speech to declare their new friendship. The following day, Tadano arrives in class, and he notices that Komi is already shaking like a leaf, so he asks her what happened, and she hands him an envelope. When he opens the envelope, he finds a letter, which says that they bugged her bed, but he asks her if she's speaking in code since she can't understand her, so she explains that she wrote that joke because she heard on television that holes are important for communication. He explains to her that jokes are funnier in the right situation, so she attempts another horrible joke, and he informs her that jokes work better when they're said out loud. Suddenly, Komi walks out of class and sends Tadano a voice note with another joke, but Tadano wonders why she's so hung up on dad jokes. Komi then returns and asks what he thinks, but this puts him in a tough spot because he doesn't want to tell her that her dad jokes are hot trash. Just then, Najimi arrives, complaining about the weather, and Tadano is relieved that the loudmouth has come to the rescue, but Najimi shows him a note Komi left in his locker with a joke so bad he thinks it's a death threat. After Tadano explains everything to him, Najimi asks Tadano to show Komi how it's done, and Komi dances around in anticipation, but Tadano's brain catches fire as he tries to think of a joke, making him realize that he's a worse comedian than the literal mute girl. Shortly after, Najimi asks Komi where she buys her clothes, but she says she's never bought any, so he asks what she does on her day off. Komi says she doesn't go out much, so Najimi suggests that they go shopping that day, but Komi complains that it's scary, so Najimi sweetens the deal by asking Tadano to accompany them as well. However, Tadano notices that Komi is still conflicted, so he tries to decline, but Najimi says he needs him to be his translator, making Tadano finally agree. When he asks Komi if he can invite someone else, she nods in agreement, so Najimi cheerfully asks Agare to join them, and she agrees, thinking Komi is going to walk her like a dog, but they have no idea that Ren is eavesdropping on them. During the trip, Ren meets them at the mall, pretending it's a coincidence, but the boys see right through her nonsense, so Najimi asks if she followed them. However, she ignores him and asks Komi what kind of clothes she likes, but Komi explains that she has no idea because her mom buys all her clothes, and even though she needs clothes, she doesn't know what to wear to go shopping. Seeing this, Najimi decides that they should have a contest to determine who can pick the coolest clothes for Komi with 10,000 yen, and even though Komi's simp girls are fired up, Tadano tries to suggest searching together, but Najimi ignores him and declares the start of their competition. Minutes later, Komi steps out in a beautiful red Chun-Li outfit, which Najimi chose for her, and after tallying the votes, Najimi scores 34 points. Up next, Komi puts on the outfit Ren chose, which makes her look like a desperate hoe, but she spent beyond the 10,000 yen limit, so she's disqualified. Afterwards, Komi changes into the casual outfit Agare chose for her, but everyone complains that it's too tacky, and she scores 18 points in total. Since it's Tadano's turn, he explains that he just chose whatever because he doesn't know anything about fashion, but Ren tells him to quit his yapping, so he hands Komi an outfit. After she changes into it, everyone's jaws drop to the floor as they see that she looks like a literal goddess, and everyone, including Komi, scores it a 10, so they end up buying Tadano's choice. Later that evening, Komi is in her room, staring at the outfit in a mirror, and she realizes that her hair is getting messy, so she makes up her mind to get a makeover. When Komi arrives at the salon, a worker named Arai greets her, but she starts trembling, so Arai shivers as well while brainstorming about what to do. However, the boss of the salon, Maki, arrives and recognizes Komi, so she invites her in. Arya rattles her shrimp-sized brain to figure out why Komi didn't respond and why she invited her in, and she concludes that it's the boss's aura that helped her communicate with Komi, so she bows in respect to her. As Maki cuts her hair, Arai notices that they both look elegant, so she starts taking pictures, but Maki reminds her to do her job, so she puts away the camera. Maki then asks Komi how her school life is going, and Komi shivers, but Maki somehow translates her body language to mean that she's having fun, so she asks Arai to apply shampoo to her hair. This makes Arai excited, so asks Komi what age she started coming there, and Komi points to a magazine which shows the age, but since Komi didn't tell her verbally, Arai worries that she may never become a pro since Komi doesn't want to talk to her. After she's done with the hair, Komi pays the bill, and Arai tries to hand her the receipt, but she points to a page in the newspaper, which makes Arai thank her as she leaves. Arai then heads back inside the salon and tells Maki that she thought Komi hated her, so Maki explains that some people don't like talking much. The next day, everyone greets Komi normally, but when Tadano arrives, he notices that she has cut hair, and this shocks her. but all the others start crashing over how dumb they are for missing it. Later that night, Komi is in bed, shivering while remembering her interactions with her friends earlier that day, and she wonders if she's boring and weird, but when she remembers how Tadano spoke up for her, she sleeps peacefully. The next day, Najimi claims that he wants to die, and when Tadano asks why, he reminds them that exams are starting the following week, but this doesn't surprise Tadano, because he knows the bird brain hates exams. Najimi then suggests studying together, so they all head to the library and start goofing off there until a lady built like Roman Reigns bonks Najimi on the head and tells him not to make noise. When Najimi asks who she is, Agari introduces her as a senior named Gorimi, who stops people from making noise in the library, but Najimi still doesn't want to study, so he brings a brick game for them to play. As they play the game, Najimi makes a goofy face, causing Tadano to tip over the bricks, so Gorimi resets their brains and carries Najimi away to spank him some more. However, Komi tells Tadano that she had fun playing the game, and she wants to play some more, so he decides that they should join Najimi. After exams, the summer break begins, but even though she's done with her homework, Komi is feeling nervous about going out. However, Najimi suddenly calls her and invites her to join him and Tadano to the pool the next day, so she agrees and celebrates with a fist pump. The next day, Komi puts on a dazzling summer outfit for the trip, but she gets so nervous that she checks her bag a million times until her mom comes to remind her that it's time to leave. Soon after, she arrives at the resort 30 minutes earlier than the agreed time and starts shivering until Najimi and Tadano arrive. After complimenting Komi's outfit, Najimi runs ahead to get things started, leading to an awkward silence between Tadano and Komi. But Tadano breaks the ice by telling Komi that she looks beautiful, which makes her blush before Najimi calls out to them. As they walk together, they see Agari running towards them with her heavy melons jiggling all over the place, so Najimi explains that he invited her as well, but when Ren shows up with a bunch of background characters, Najimi says he didn't invite them at all. As usual, Ren pretends that it's a coincidence to beat the stalker allegations and asks to join in their fun, and Najimi cheerfully agrees, but when he asks Komi, she nods and starts shaking again. Inside the resort, Najimi starts jumping around in excitement, and the mob characters try to join, but Ren stops them and puts the fear of God in them by threatening to carve out their marble sacks if they share too much screen time with Komi. In the girls' locker room, Komi prepares to switch outfits, but her number one gooner, Ren, is beside her, thanking the heavens that the days she spent stalking Komi's house didn't go to waste, because she's about to see Komi's bare vanilla-flavored cupcakes and a swimsuit. However, Komi pulls out a school swimsuit instead, which shocks her, but instead of taking the L, she grabs Komi's hand and coldly invites her to go swimsuit shopping. At the pool, Najimi meets up with the other boys, wearing an outfit that would make Diddy do a backflip in excitement, and the other boys start drooling over him, which shocks Tadano.
Why are you gay?
Suddenly, Agari arrives in a swimsuit that displays her juicy melons like an art exhibition, and this makes the fools lose their mind even more. But they actually have no standards, because even surfboard-shaped Ren makes them drool when she arrives in her swimsuit. As Komi walks into the scene with a swimsuit, all the men forget their wives exist as they gawk at her with full focus, and the loser trio are so overwhelmed that they look away to calm their joysticks. To kickstart their fun adventure, they all head to the water slide, and Najimi asks Agari to be his partner, because her natural cushions will save him from dying in an accident. The other doofuses start fighting over the right to partner up with Komi, but the clerk tells Tadano to join her in the slide since they don't have much time, so he boards the floater behind her. As they slide together, Tadano gets a face full of Komi's hair, which makes him feel uncomfortable, and when they finally reach the ending point, Komi starts trembling in your favorite Netflix and chill position because she low-key wants to go again. After going 4 more times, Najimi suggests that they go to the lazy river, and when they arrive there, he challenges Tadano and Komi to a battle to see who would last the longest underwater, stipulating that the losers would have to buy the winner some drinks. As they all head underwater, Najimi puts on a goofy disguise to make Tadano fold, but Tadano looks away, only to see Komi's cute face struggling to hold her breath, which makes everyone lose oxygen. While seated at the shore with Tadano, Komi starts drinking her soda, but Najimi suddenly suggests trying the diving board, so she runs after him. However, Komi trips on a rock, and Tadano tries to save her, but Ren knees him in the face while rushing ahead to save her queen. Soon after, Komi's injured knee is patched up, and as everyone checks on her, they notice that she's sad, so they suggest calling off the trip. However, Komi tells them to enjoy the trips without her, and Najimi drags everyone ahead to continue the fun. But Tadano and Ren aren't comfortable with leaving Komi behind, so he explains that Komi will feel bad if she's the reason everyone stops having fun. Komi then sits on her mat and feels sad while watching everyone else have fun, but Tadano suddenly arrives and startles her. Seeing how depressed she looks, he assures her that her friends won't hate her because they're all good people, but she complains that she hates the feeling of being the one who ruined everyone's fun. However, Tadano splashes water on her face and tells her that no one would be able to have fun if she's feeling sad before stretching out his hand to her. Komi grabs his hand, so he pulls her into the water, but starts freaking out over the fact that he just held hands with his crush 2 seasons earlier than most romance anime. Najimi interrupts their romantic moment by splashing water in their face with a water gun, and they join the others in having fun together once again before returning home. The next day, Komi tells her mom that she wants to head to the library, but she sees a beetle in front of the door, which scares her, so her father, Masayoshi, who is also a mute dude, decides to walk her to the library. On the way, Masayoshi decides to take a detour by taking Komi to a restaurant where they remain silent like logs of wood while eating ice cream together. However, Komi suddenly gets a brain freeze, so Masayoshi gives her a cup of coffee and finally opens his mouth while asking her how the coffee tastes, but she teases him by pretending to be nervous, causing him to pat her on the head. After the meal, he drops Komi off at the library, where she notices that people are staring at her as she reads her book, so she walks around aimlessly to calm her nerves before sitting on a bench. On her way home, Komi sees a playground, so she plays around on all the different rides until she gets tired and sits on a bench. She then notices a tap nearby, so she drinks some water from it, and Tadano sees this beautiful scene while riding on his bike, so he thanks the heavens for giving him eyes. Days later, Komi's family is riding away together in their car, and Shuko yaps non-stop about how horrible Jujutsu Kaisen's ending was, but the others remain silent as usual. Eventually, they arrive at the graveyard, where they say a prayer to a lost loved one, and Komi is the last one to stand up, so Shuko compliments her for having a long conversation with their ancestors. Afterwards, they meet up with Komi's grandmother, Yuiko, in their villa, and Shoko starts bonding with her sister-in-law, Ryoko, while Komi's uncle, Sadayoshi, has an intense stare-down with her dad, Masayoshi. Ryoko then asks Komi to play with her cousin, Akira, but Akira hides while watching her from the corner, so Ryoko explains that she's feeling shy since they haven't seen each other in a long time. However, Komi jump scares her from behind, but this makes her freak out, so Komi tickles her until she passes out laughing. Following this, they enjoy some random activities together, and when Akira asks Komi to play a board game with her, Komi nods in agreement. But this makes Akira cry tears of joy because she's happy Komi finally wants to play with her, unlike before, when she'd just watch her. As they play the game together, Shuko interrupts and tells Komi to see her grandmother before dinner, because in their household, it's customary to keep Yuiko in the loop of current situations and seek her wisdom. When she arrives in Yuiko's room, she sees her dad walking out with a face that suggests that he's been told something stern. But when she sits, Yuiko asks her if she's made any friends at school, so Komi smiles and nods. This makes the hag happy, so she calls Komi to rest on her lap, and as she does, she places her hand on Komi's hand while pestering her with questions about her love life. Meanwhile, Tadano gets a call from Najimi, asking to meet him at a festival that evening, and even though he's confused, Najimi tells him to wear a yukata before ending the call. Later that evening, Tadano is waiting for Najimi at the festival spot, but Komi suddenly arrives, wearing a beautiful yukata, which leaves Tadano speechless. Komi starts trembling as she worries that her yukata doesn't suit her, so Tadano explains that she looks really nice. Just then, Najimi arrives with hundreds of people behind him, but this confuses Tadano, so he explains that he booked the festival for all his friends at once, making Tadano wonder how he can be so good at socializing. As Najimi walks ahead with his battalion, Tadano tells Komi to move ahead with him, but he notices that she's stressed out because she forgot her notebook, so he assures her that she'll be fine if he accompanies her. While walking ahead, Tadano starts freaking out over the fact that he's alone with Komi at a festival, and this makes things awkward between them, so he suggests playing one of the festival games. However, during the shooting game, Tadano can't hit the target because he's distracted by Komi, who is staring at him intensely from behind like an upper moon demon, so he tells Komi to give it a try. As Komi prepares to take the shot, Makaru appears beside her, and she's also holding a gun because she wants to compete with Komi to see who will win the most prizes. However, just like last time, Komi smokes her in every round, so she cheats by taking a shot at point-blank range before walking away with the gun. Najimi then arrives and calls them to play the candy cutout game from Squid Game, and they agree since they haven't seen the show. In the candy cutout game, a player uses a toothpick to cut out a shape from a flat piece of candy, and successful attempts may be exchanged for prizes, but Najimi fumbles the game 15 times in a row. However, Komi carves out that candy easily, so Najimi leaves to get drinks for them. But Tadano notices that Komi has been acting differently, which makes him wonder if she isn't having fun. As he tries to ask her, she interrupts by verbally telling him to look at her outfit, and this makes him realize that she's been trying to tell him this all along, but couldn't since she forgot her notebook. Shortly afterwards, the gang are having drinks together, and Ren arrives to join them. But when she sees Komi's gorgeous outfit, she immediately passes out. Najimi then suggests that they play a rope lottery, which is a simple festival game where players pull a rope and get the attached prize, and Najimi aims to get the top prize, so he pulls the oldest rope, only to end up pulling the worst prize in the bunch. Out of desperation, he turns to Tadano to try it out, and as Tadano searches through the rope, the wrinkled old hag with dried-out plots starts making scary faces to distract him, so he fails the round. Since Komi is their last hope, she steps up to make a try, but the old lady is determined to use every underhanded tactic to stop her from winning. Since the top prize is a PS5, but Komi easily pulls the top prize, making her freak out. Shortly afterwards, Komi is playing a fishing game, and Naka arrives to challenge her, but all the fish avoid her like she's got an STD, so she only manages to catch one fish and a pity prize before leaving. Ren then arrives and tells Komi to get on her knees so she can play out every Gooner's fantasy by feeding her a sausage in that position, but Najimi eats the sausage instead, causing her to freak out. As they walk ahead, Komi gets distracted by an arts booth, and the others leave her behind, so she starts panicking, but Tadano arrives and tells her to contact him if she gets lost. They sit by the corner together to wait for Najimi and the others, and Komi uses a stick to write on the ground that she had fun when it was just the two of them. But before Tadano can see it, she gets flustered and wipes it off. On the last day of summer, Komi visits Tadano at his place, but Ren suddenly arrives to stop him and Najimi from tag-teaming on Komi's cheeks. In Tadano's room, the gang are getting ready to start their hangout when Tadano's sister arrives and introduces herself as Hitomi, before warning them that she'll be hanging around, since it's also her room. She greets everyone cheerfully, but when she sees Komi trembling, she drags Tadano outside to ask if he's been hammering her cookie in secret. As everyone sits together, Najimi reveals that he hasn't started his summer homework, and Tadano and Komi say they haven't finished theirs as well, so they spend the next few hours doing homework together while reminiscing about all the good times they had that summer. During the conversation, everyone notices that Komi is fighting back tears, so they start freaking out, but she explains that she wanted the summer break to last longer so she could have more fun with everyone, and this makes everyone happy. On September 1st, all the students return to school looking like depressed zombies because they missed the holidays, but when they see Komi in the yard, they all start simping for her. Meanwhile, a girl named Inaka is walking through the yard, feeling frustrated by the fact that she's nothing but a country bumpkin. On the way to class, Inaka thinks about how she kept her secret during the first semester by remaining silent during class conversations and making her skirt way longer than the others. However, she feels different today because she raised her skirt 3 centimeters above her knee as her fall semester glow-up, but when she sees Komi walking into class, she gawks over her and wishes that she could be a city girl like her. Just then, Najimi arrives and complains that he forgot his lunch before sending Komi to get him a super long sandwich order, but Tadano tells him to go get it himself, so he complains that he's yet to be done with his summer homework. While eavesdropping on them, Inaka starts daydreaming about eating a Subway sandwich of her own, and Najimi gaslights Komi until she agrees to get him the sandwich, so Inaka makes plans to follow Komi and learn how to be a city girl who can eat Subway as well. As Komi stands by the restaurant's door, Tadano watches from afar and notices that Inaka is spying on her as well, and Inaka is glazing Komi for being so calm despite being in a store as popular as Domino's, but in reality, Komi is so nervous that she's vibrating. Komi finally walks in, so Inaka enters the restaurant as well, and they both freak out because of the number of rich people inside. When the owner asks Komi to say her order, Inaka remembers that it's bad to make staff wait, but Komi suddenly walks out of the restaurant and starts vibrating like Scooby-Doo. While watching her, Inaka starts glazing Komi, thinking she's such a nonchalant queen that she does things at her own pace without caring about the staff, but Komi finally walks in and points at the order she wants. However, the chef starts spamming her questions about the extras she'd like in her sandwich, and Komi remains expressionless, making both Inaka and the chef start glazing her for frame mogging, but her brain is actually overheating from too much information. After getting the order, Komi makes her way back to school, and Inaka is amazed that Komi was able to successfully get a sandwich order without uttering a word, so she walks in to try it out herself. However, in class, Najimi tells Komi that the sandwich she bought isn't what he asked for. Later that evening, Komi is reading a book, and she gets a text from Naka, asking her to visit home, so she agrees to come over, and this makes Naka celebrate. On arriving at Naka's place, she tries to ring the doorbell, but Naka suddenly appears, doing a JoJo pose while welcoming her to her home, when in her mind, she's leaping in excitement that Komi actually came. They soon arrive at Naka's room, and Komi admires all the anime posters on the wall while Naka freaks out over the fact that she's there, but Naka snaps back to her senses when she remembers that she has to show Komi a good time. She tells Komi to sit where she wants, and Komi sits on the bed, so Naka turns on her television to show her the latest edition of Elden Ring, which she loves playing. But Komi doesn't understand anything since she isn't a gamer, so Naka fears that Komi could ditch her. Out of desperation, Naka texts Najimi to come over, and Najimi arrives shortly after with Tadano, but she complains that boys aren't allowed in her room, so Najimi explains that Tadano is barely one, since he's only packing a 2-inch shrimp. Najimi then suggests that they play a bootleg version of Super Mario Bros., which is a 4-player game about swimming, so they all select characters while playing the game. In the game, Najimi tries to punch Komi, and Naka stops him, but Komi walks into a literal mud pit since she doesn't understand the controls. As Najimi and Naka fight, claims that she'll never let Komi get destroyed since it's her responsibility to take care of her, but Najimi's character suddenly becomes Bruce Lee, as he overwhelms Naka with a series of combos. As Najimi prepares to finish her off with a flame punch, Tadano teaches Komi how to shake off the mud, and as she does, the mud flies into Najimi's eyes, allowing Naka to send him flying with a powerful punch. As she celebrates, Komi smiles as well, but Najimi starts ranting like a sore loser, so she challenges him to several more rounds. Several days later, Komi is chilling in her living room when she gets a call from Najimi, and when she meets him, he explains to her and Tadano, who is dressed up like a mascot, that he needs them to help hand out tissues since everyone else canceled. He then starts cheerfully handing out tissues to the people on the street, and Komi decides to join him, but she gets nervous and starts trembling, so everyone passes her by, which makes her sad. However, a lady who really needs a tissue shows up, so Komi hands her one, and she immediately accepts. Seeing this, the other people on the street finally approach Komi for tissues, and Komi ends up selling out within minutes, so Najimi promises that he'll give her half the money, but they completely forgot about Tadano, who is dying of heat in his costume. The next day in class, Tadano meets up with Komi, who notices that there's a grain on his cheek and starts vibrating because she can't figure out what it is. When Tadano asks her what's going on, she asks if he's really Tadano, but he gets even more confused, so she starts panicking. Just then, all their friends arrive and start doing their usual weird stuff, which makes Komi even more scared, but she eventually wakes up in the real world and is thankful that it was only a dream. However, when Tadano arrives in class the next day, Komi freaks out when she notices that he has the exact grain she saw in her dream. Throughout the day, Komi watches Tadano closely while he hangs out with Najimi, and when he asks what's wrong, she tells him to call him by her given name, just like he does for Najimi. Tadano's brain overheats, and he reminds her that she's a girl, but Najimi arrives and calls her by her given name while telling Tadano to give it a try. However, Tadano can't bring himself to say it, so Najimi tells Komi to try calling him by his given name without writing it in a book, but she can't say it either, so Najimi tells Tadano that he has a sesame seed on his face. Several days later, the school holds an event called Sports Day, and Komi changes into her sports gear, but gets startled when she hears the class behind her doing Wakandan war chants in preparation for the competition. Najimi meets up with Komi and Tadano, and starts jumping around to get them more hyped for the sports festival. But a red-haired student they've never seen before suddenly arrives and starts emoting, so Najimi introduces her as Chika. Chika introduces herself to Komi as a second-year student, and after praising Komi's looks for several minutes, she tells their class to bring their A-game as she walks away. However, Ren suddenly arrives, boiling in anger because Chika put her hands on her glorious queen, and she tells the rest of Komi's fan club to put their lives on the line to get revenge for Komi. The MC explains that the sports festival is a round-robin tournament with all classes from 1st to 3rd year, and the class with the most points by the end of the tournament wins. He then introduces himself as Suukasa, and the special judge as the vice principal, before revealing that the first game is a series of group exercises, where the person with the most beautiful form will earn 10 points from the principal. When the game begins, the vice principal notices that Chika's form is as beautiful as Angela White's in your favorite Cornhub videos, and she assumes that she'll be the best in the competition, until she notices Komi's elegant form, which motivates her to give her the 10 points. The second game is a class tug-o-war, but when it begins, Ren and her fellow Komi simps start passing out because of an overdose of Komi's aura, and this allows Chika's class to easily get the win. Up next, both teams engaged in an obstacle relay, which also has points for artistry, and Agari stumbles but still racks up all the artistry points using the jiggle physics of her melons before tagging Naka. As Naka runs ahead, she questions the relevance of the entire event and plans to fumble intentionally, but she soon reaches a section where the players are required to search for candy in a bin of starch with no hands. She hesitates when she realizes that it's designed to make people look foolish, but when she sees Komi staring at her, she goes Super Saiyan and pulls it off before tagging to Tadano. As Tadano runs ahead, the first years cheer for him desperately because they're currently in last place, and Najimi motivates Komi to cheer for him as well, but Tadano gets tired and falls to the ground. However, he sees Komi telling him to do his best with her cute voice, and this makes him connect to the Speed Force, so he dashes ahead at super speed and finishes third in the race. It eventually starts raining, and the students take shelter in a canopy, but Shuko's mom suddenly arrives, making everyone shocked as they wonder when Komi learned how to speak. She introduces herself to the students and tells them to get along with Komi, but Komi pushes her outside the tent, where she tells Komi that she has nice friends. When the sun comes back up, the MC announces that the next competition is a class competition borrowing race, and Agari approaches Tadano to borrow his jacket. After he gives it to her, Ren arrives to borrow his hair, so he agrees to lend her his hair, and Komi asks to borrow his headband as well. Once he gives it to her, Najimi arrives and asks Tadano for 1,000 yen, but Tadano refuses to give the greedy moron. The next competition is a game of musical chairs played by the entire school, and the MC announces that the remaining students will be awarded points for their class since there are only 100 chairs left, but when the music stops, everyone offers Komi the chair. After engaging in many other heated games, they finally arrive at the final game of the day, which is a class relay where each class will be represented by 4 runners, and the first place winner gets 100 million points. Once the race begins, all runners from each class run ahead, and Chika tries to show sportsmanship by shaking Komi's hand, but the antisocial airhead starts trembling, so she wishes her luck instead. When their teammates pass the baton to them, the 2 baddies run ahead, and Chika dashes in front, but Komi suddenly slips and falls while everyone watches in shock. However, all the first years start cheering for Komi, so she gets back up and runs passionately ahead with the power of friendship, but finishes in second place, just a few inches away from the winner, Chika. The next day in school, Komi watches from the sidelines as Tadano talks to a girl, and she feels jealous about it, so she continues watching them. Shortly after, everyone in class starts pestering Tadano with questions and requests about the upcoming cultural festival, but suddenly, the girl he was talking to earlier, Nene, arrives and offers to help Tadano out with the forms on his table. As they carry the forms, Tadano suggests allowing Komi to help, but Nene says 2 of them are enough, so they leave class together, making Komi even more jealous. While dropping the forms in the science lab, Nene tells Tadano that she offered to help him because she found out that he was being bullied by everyone in class, and he's surprised that she's such a thoughtful person. On their way back, she asks Tadano how he handles all the troubles of being close friends with the beauty queen of the class, but Tadano says there's no pressure at all and tells her to have a conversation with Komi to learn more about her. Seeing this, Komi freaks out from her hiding spot, and they notice her, so Nene tries to start a conversation with her, but Komi runs away. After school, Nene arrives to help Tadano with another wave of forms on his desk, but he doesn't want to keep Komi waiting, so he tells her to go home. However, Komi tells him that she wants to help too, so he finally lets her, and when Nene notices that Komi likes Tadano, she leaves the room to give them some alone time. The next day, Komi and Tadano are walking through the hallway together, but Nene suddenly arrives and hugs them both, so Komi apologizes for running away from her the previous day, which makes Nene laugh. Nene then apologizes to Komi for hanging out with her man the previous day, and this makes Komi so flustered that she runs upstairs to cool her head. Later in class, Komi tells Tadano that she's interested in taking photo stickers, so Najimi and Ren arrive and offer to follow them. After school, they arrive at the arcade, and Komi is dazzled by all the glamorous photoshops around. The four of them take a bunch of photos together in a booth, and Najimi laughs at how goofy they look, but Tadano is happy because Komi seems satisfied with it. A few days later, Tadano hands Komi a pretty keychain he saw her staring at the previous day at the arcade, but she shows him that she already bought one, so they exchange keychains. Later that day, the class engages in a heated argument to determine what they do for the cultural festival, but Najimi stops everyone and decides that they should hear one last pitch from each choice before voting one last time. He then suggests that they do a maid cafe and sweetens up the deal by offering them a chance to see Komi in a maid costume, but Ren suggests that they do a haunted house instead, claiming that would be the perfect thing to bring them together, even though it takes a lot of work. However, she then reveals her real objective, which is to sneakishly play with Komi's cakes in the dark room during the show, and everyone agrees that it's a great idea except Naka, who suggests that they do a band instead. She explains that not many people would be featured on that band, but it would still be a perfect opportunity to hear the voice of their goddess, and everyone immediately agrees. However, Agari proposes a whack-a-mole game instead, since it's her life's goal to get whacked by Komi, and all the fellow sick freaks in class love the idea, but the Naruto boy, Shino, suggests that they make an indie film where Princess Kome is snatched by ninjas. The class rejects the idea, so Nene suggests they do a food truck instead where they serve rice balls and everyone starts folding, but Makaru says it would be better if they do a competition instead. After taking a second vote, they arrive at a three-way tie, and the students start fighting again, so Tadano asks Komi what she votes for. Komi chooses the maid cafe, and once everyone hears this, the entire class unanimously votes for it as their choice. Shortly after, they start designing the class, and Komi wants to help, but they put her on a throne with two morons bowing down to her. One of the class girls meets a cultural festival committee member named Otori to ask for permission to buy some materials since they don't have enough, so Otori calls Komi to join her in going to buy them. Everyone in class starts worrying because they don't want anything to happen to their queen, so Nene suggests that she join them to look after her, and Najimi tries to suggest joining as well, but some nameless losers hold him back. The girls soon arrive at the store, and Nene tries to suggest splitting up, but she realizes that something bad would happen if she leaves the two dimwits alone, so she scraps the idea. While shopping for some wooden panels, Nene asks Otori for her opinion, but she says she isn't sure because it's her first time there, so Nene picks one of the panels. However, Otori suddenly vanishes, so they split up to look for her, and Komi finds her searching for them in a strange room, so she pulls her back. Seeing that Komi wants to talk to her, Otori advises Komi to take her time, so Komi asks her why she requested her to come. Otori explains that she wanted to become friends with Komi and the others after seeing how much fun they're having together, so Komi tells her about how she couldn't participate in events in her previous school, which made her feel bad, but when Otori asked her to help, she was really happy. However, Otori didn't get any of what she said because she's too busy playing around with a random chainsaw. On the way back, Otori informs Nene that she's friends with them now, and then tells Komi that they'd work hard together during the cultural festival, so Komi verbally says yes, which shocks Nene. Hours later, Najimi takes Komi and Tadano to a street to convince some shop owners to hang their cultural festival flyers in their stores, and he immediately convinces a shop owner to agree, so Komi tells Tadano that she wants to try. They send Komi into a bar to convince the owner, but she gets nervous and ends up eating a whole meal instead of getting it done, so Tadano suggests going to a place which Komi has been to before. Minutes later, they arrive at the salon, and when Komi hands Maki the flyer, she immediately understands that Komi wants her to hang it up. Following this, Komi gives a flyer to the silent ramen shop owner as well, and he gleefully agrees since they're kindred spirits. Afterwards, Tadano and Najimi meet a mother to convince her to hang their flyer, and her son won't stop crying because of their chopped faces, but he stops when he sees Komi's super cute face. The night before the festival, many of the students stay behind at school to prepare for the festival, but they're all exhausted from all the hard work, so Najimi and his friends offer them some rice balls to help replenish their energy. However, The idiots start racking their non-existent brains to figure out which rice ball was made by Komi, and after Najimi and the others give them descriptions of the ones they made, the simps do a game of rock, paper, scissors, which helps them finally choose. As everyone enjoys the rice balls, Tadano picks up a square-shaped one, and he eats it cheerfully because he thinks it was made by Najimi, but Komi is trembling beside him because she knows it was actually her who made it. The next day, the festival begins, and Komi asks Najimi to give her a longer maid outfit since the one she's wearing is too short, but he says there aren't any longer ones, and Ren collapses from the sight of her thick thighs. Meanwhile, a pathetic dude named Akido, who has dedicated his life to studying maid cafes, arrives at their maid cafe, planning to leave if it's too subpar, but Najimi invites him in, so he takes a seat. When Najimi asks for his order, he orders an omuris served with love, but he's surprised by how energetic Najimi is, and even more stunned to see all the strange maids around. However, Komi suddenly arrives to serve him water, but he can't understand her cold, silent expressions, so he assumes that she's threatening him. After eating his meal, Akido starts walking away, and Komi tries to send him off like a nice maid but fails, so he realizes that she's the Ice Queen type. After he leaves, Najimi pressures Tadano to put on a maid outfit, and once he does, all the boys start hating on him, but Komi gawks over his pretty looks. Just then, Komi's mom arrives, so Tadano serves her some water, and she teases him for a bit before calling Komi's brother Shisuke, who is so handsome that all the girls start going crazy for him, but he nonchalantly walks away. As Tadano rests by a bench, Komi sits beside him, so he asks her how he looks, and she tells him he looks cute, causing him to blush. A few hours later, business is booming at the maid cafe, and Najimi starts pestering everyone around to come to their maid cafe, but some of them decline, so he asks Komi to walk 100 meters outside the cafe. She complies with his request and ends up coming back with a large number of customers, who are completely enchanted by her looks. So Najimi calls himself the new Aizen for coming up with this marketing strategy, which he calls the Komi Snowball Method. Following this, Najimi asks his baddie maids to give basic services to the customers in exchange for money, and after they're done, Najimi is literally swimming in a pool of millions of dollars. As he brags about his Ponzi scheme, the teacher arrives with Garimi and gives him a strike for violating the rules before making him refund all the money to the customers. Najimi then suggests that they advertise their maid cafe the legal way by checking other events while wearing their maid outfits, but he's secretly planning to use a super version of the Komi Snowball Method. They soon arrive at the haunted house, and as they walk inside, Komi trembles every time she sees a scary painting on the wall, but a sponge suddenly flies to her face, making her freak out even more. As they move deeper into the house, Otori, who is one of the ghosts in disguise, is happy that her prey has finally arrived. But when she sees that it's Komi, she starts panicking because she knows she might get assassinated for scaring the goddess of their school. She eventually decides to do it since it's her responsibility, but by the time she makes up her mind, the gang have already left the haunted house. Outside, Komi is still trying to catch her breath, but Najimi suggests going to see an event called Rooftop Confessions, where students go on the roof and yell secrets or confessions of love. However, Komi says she's never heard of it, so Najimi decides that they should try it. At the event, the MC announces that the next confessor is Ren, and Ren takes the stage to announce that she's in love with Komi and wants to marry her. But Komi remains silent as usual, so she starts geeking out about how cool Komi is. The next person called to the rooftop is Komi, so Najimi pushes her up there, and the crowd cheers loudly once they see her like she's Sabrina Carpenter. When they notice she's about to speak, they all calm themselves down to hear the voice of their goddess, but all she says is meow, and this makes them celebrate even more because they've always fantasized about seeing a cat maid. As the crowd cheers, Komi starts getting dizzy from the noise, so Najimi drags her to the hallway where he laughs about their plans being successful before placing some cat ears on her head. However, a girl suddenly arrives with 2 monks who were sent by the teacher to beat some sense into Najimi, so they carry him away. Shortly after, Komi walks through the hallway in glasses, and she notices that people are staring at her more than usual, so Tadano explains that she's wearing a cute outfit, causing her brain to have a meltdown. Nene then arrives and asks Komi to walk around with her, but they notice that Otori is chilling in a trash can, so they pull her out to join the fun. Following this, they join several events where they have fun together, and afterwards they sit in the class, eating some snacks together, but Otori tells them that a band is playing downstairs, so Nene suggests that they go check it out. While watching the band together, Komi stares at Tadano, so he tells her the band are doing well, but his heart starts pounding. Eventually, it's announced that the festival has come to an end, and the students are asked to gather in the hall. When they arrive there, the MC announces that the first years won the competition, but just as they start celebrating, he informs them that their grand prize is being withdrawn because Najimi scammed people like a Nigerian prince. Tadano tries to console Komi since she was clearly the star player of their team, but she says it's okay since she had fun. The MC then announces that it's time for the highly anticipated post-festival dance party, and all the Komi simps start fighting each other for the right to dance with her. As the students dance, Komi stands beside Tadano, even though she wants to join them, because she feels shy about being watched, but Tadano notices this, so he asks her to dance with him, and she agrees. They head to the center of the dance floor together, but they both get flustered, so Najimi breaks the ice by offering to dance with both of them, and they dance together along with all their other friends. Afterwards, Najimi suggests that they throw a party to celebrate the success of their maid cafe, so they go to a karaoke joint together, where Komi gets nervous and starts trembling again. Tadano tells her that she doesn't have to sing, but Najimi says that everyone has to sing and takes the stage to sing a Michael Jackson song while everyone cheers for him. After he's done, Ren sings a passionate love song to Komi and ends up scoring 98, but Naka sings one of Demon Slayer's openings in a creepy way. When everyone else is done singing, Komi finally takes the stage, but she's so nervous that she makes weird noises, and everyone celebrates because even brief sounds from the queen are enough gooning material for a month. Afterwards, Tadano takes the stage and sings Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us, but no one listens to him other than Komi, who cheers him on. That's it for this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed and watch this video on screen.